Welcome back to VenomousStare's YouTube channel, where we are consistently looking at all things StarCraft 2. This time we have an exciting 2v2 that I just played with a random ally, and it is on one of the newer 2v2 maps. It is very bad for Zerg and it's very good for Terran, and it's pretty good for Protoss, but it's a Terran map, as they say. As the great Greg Idgerfields once said about the map Scrap Station, people think it's a Zerg map now, but it's actually a Terran map, and he was right about that, and I'm telling you, this is a Terran map. And don't let the wide natural choke fool you. If you work together, that's very manageable. But the bases sort of arc up to the northern side of the map, and a lot of the map comes down to controlling the towers and sort of choke point control. Is a lot of fights will happen here, and a lot of fights will happen here or here. You never want to take this base. This is like the trap base, like mini gold bases in 2v2 that just lose you the game. Never take this base. Always take this as your third and just expand upward. Or if you're maybe going mech, you could get away with taking this and taking a tower. We can see me in the top left here is open for gas pool. My random ally, nicknamed Roro, it looks like he's going for a bit of a Reaper build. Now Roro is actually a highly respected macro Zerg in Brood War, and then at the Kespa crossover to StarCraft 2 back in 2013. Roro was a name that got a lot of respect. This is just some jerk off who watches Scooby-Doo though. Doc is getting an expansion, and Ultra, I guess his name's Ultralisk, but it's misspelled. He's starting to wall this low ground. Now I like this play of quick walling the low ground. It's especially good against double Zerg, but I don't like the player that's doing it. This guy is completely clueless. Ultralisk. I hate to even call him Ultralisk because that's like the name of a unit, but this Ultralisk guy's a fucking clown. I had him in my game a couple hours ago, and he was on my team, and he fast expanded. I gave him the pocket base to that newest 2v2 map that's pretty good for Zerg, and the guy didn't make an orbital for 5 minutes. He just sat there on a normal command center, and that's one of those newbie mistakes that I just can't really get over. We can see he has formed a nice little wall. He's starting to bunker up, and Doc has gotten a Reaper and delayed this expansion. Now I've played with Doc quite a bit too, as you see some sloppy observing. He's not very good. He likes to go bio. He's average in the sense that, you know, he's not a complete moron and can use hotkeys, but he's just not that good of a player, and I'm not really scared of him when he's on the other team. We can see he has an expansion up. He's probably going to go 2-2-1-1 based on his buildings he has. Assuming he fires up stim here pretty quick, he'll probably get a starport. Notice a reactor, so yeah, this looks like 2-1-1. And Ultralisk, it's nice that he's walled in and he's really helped his ally secure an expansion down here. So this map is really good for Terran because it's choke pointy, and it can be hard for Zerg to take these bases down here, because once you get a foothold on this plateau, you sort of have killed all the bases. And expanding northbound, forget about it, especially with this tower and this high ground here. It's a total joke. We can see here, as usual, Ultralisk is not building an orbital as quickly as he should. He is getting stuff in the little smoke area, which is hidden. These used to be on like all the old 1v1 maps, these little smoked off areas. Really jokish. The one on Metalopolis comes to mind. But anyway, it's always good to have a spotter in the smoke. Ultralisk has made a tank. He's getting another factory. He has actually contributed a decent amount defense-wise to this game. If the blue team had gone for a ground-based rush, it would not have worked. We can see economy-wise, he's not really getting ahead because he's delaying his CCs too long. Whenever we played together, I told him, make an orbital as soon as your CC finishes every game. So it's interesting to see that he didn't do that. One of the most famous and noteworthy parts of this entire map is this area right here, because you can siege tanks up on this low ground that prevent the natural from mining. Now, considering it's 2v2 and there's another high ground on top of it, it's not really that good of a spot. It's not like a Lost Temple cliff. And we can see here Ultralisk was trying to get a turret up, but once you establish a foothold on this high ground, it can be very hard. And Ultralisk is going to move a tank over. Savagewood's teching into Hydras, and a Liberator is going to come up here, and it would have been more intelligent to siege on top of the tank. Double drop here for Doc, as Roro's army is across the map, as Savagewood loses his spotting overlord there. And it would just be infinitely easy to siege a Liberator here and just basically kill the guy, but Roro is a little bit asleep at the wheel. Then he brings the Liberator way too far forward and decides to siege it. You should aim to have it lipped just on the tank. Thankfully the Cyclone wasn't microed very well, and Savagewood sort of has some stuff but not enough. He needs to wait for a critical mass of Hydroling Bane, because off of creep this army is just fucking terrible. With Focus Fire you can just rip this army apart, and we can see a perfect example of that as Doc does some very simple kiting micro and targets the Banes down, and then Savagewood is really left with nothing. He only killed a medevac there, and he's going to run in, and with Lings it becomes a little easier, but once the Lings die the Hydras are dead meat, and we see again that Doc microed his medevac back and took advantage of Savagewood. Ultralisk is having a lot of trouble securing this expansion. Both of these tanks should be right here to really put pressure, but it looks as though Roro is going to try to do some focus fire, and because this base has been so heavily attacked, Ultralisk is going to say fuck it, I'll make a PF, and we can see Doc move down to the natural but is going to be cleaned up by Savagewood. And a mule is actually landed here, gets fended off a bit by the attacking Marines, and this PF just narrowly is going to go down here, and the Liberator tanks are still around. Remember, these tanks aren't in the correct position, and if they were, this position over here at the natural would still be held, but it doesn't matter, it's going to be held anyway. Another mule is going to be landed, as Roro is doing a sloppy version of a very popular build on this map, which is to tank push the slow ground and try to secure this natural for yourself as far as the position goes, siege it up, chase your opponent back. Vikings are very good for clearing out this sort of spotting based harassment with tanks. This is the difference between like a Lost Temple where stuff is good on the high ground and just a little goofball little spot like this on a map where the low ground is what you're looking for. Savagewood has +1 Carapace, he's getting +2 as well as Hydra Speed. He's the only guy to have any sort of plus armor or weapon upgrades in the game. Doc is moving out to take his third. Doc, remember, has been relatively unharassed. He's done a good job with his medevac drops. He's taking a third. He'll probably mule hammer the shit out of this third, as a lot of mules come down. And Roro sort of sent some SCVs out too late. I was worried he was rallying them out. That would have been terrible. But if we go to income here, despite the siege attack, Roro was really far behind because of the drop and because of the fact that, well, obviously his micro's sort of bad, but he wasn't adequately reproducing. He didn't land this quick enough and start making more stuff. This area is really common to be dropped, so you always want to make a couple blind missile turrets. And Doc is pushing out to this fourth base. It looks as though he actually has a fourth. So if we're just looking at who's ahead and who is behind as the SCVs get cleaned up there, this Ultralisk guy is just fucking clueless. He's way far behind. Doesn't really have any clue what's going on. He has decent SCV saturation in the main, but that's about it. You want to always build this turret further out by the cliff to prevent stuff from being spotted over here, like medevacs and whatnot. Savagewood has a fourth base. He has quite a few drones, 72 workers, and he's starting to make lurkers. He's getting a roach warren as he was teching up straight into Hydra. And he really needs to be double upgrading here with these two Evos. He does have Bane speed, a hefty amount of lurkers, and a decent Hydra backbone, as well as enough workers to really get by and make a decent army. But against double Terran on this map, going tanks, you really need Vipers. That's the crux of the issue here. on this map as Zerg, you really have to have Vipers, as we see a humorous chase here as Savagewood burrows some Lurkers and chases tanks back. But against this many tanks on a map this chodish, you really have to have Vipers to deal with the Heartbreak Ridge-esque line of tanks that you're going to be facing. Thankfully for Savagewood, 1-1 is not yet done for the Terrans, although Doc is about to finish it, and Mech is going to be the choice for the red player Ultralisk, which is probably good. He doesn't really have the APM or mechanics to handle bio. And he just desperately needs to transfer about half of these mineral workers down to this natural and start to build a third in his main. Where you can see he's sieging up more tanks. There's a couple Vikings here to deal with any potential error. And Savagewood is being forced to retreat, even though his +1 air attack is about to finish and his roach speed's 30% done. He has Lurker Hydra, but that just gets completely shit on by tanks, and Savagewood cancels this base. As Doc is going to pressure up into Savagewood's 4th, Savagewood's going to wheel his army over. Lots of Hydras that are reasonably well upgraded. Now the Terran has 1-1, so having the 1 carapace edge isn't really going to help a lot. Roro is going to lose about half of his forces to tanks. And we can see Savagewood here does in fact have a hive. He really has to start Vipers, and we see finally 10 Vipers being made, as with 2 Terrans you really can't skimp on the spellcasters. Lurkers out here doing a decent job defending for Savagewood, but they're just not very good against tanks or Liberators. Savagewood, we can see, has made some extra Evo chambers for the Vipers to consume, which is brilliant. You don't want to make these Evo chambers in the main, because then you'll always be having to run back. You want to make them in the 3rd and 4th where you can consume right there. Savagewood is being consistently pressured back. He's having to move the Lurkers backward and backward and backward and retreat. But as Doc comes up to kill Curp Spread, he does lose a little bit of his army. And Ultralisk is continuing to siege forward here. And this could get a little tricky. Thankfully he doesn't have a Raven. Notice Doc does have this 4th base established. He has a 5th base waiting in the wings. And a scan occurs there as Savagewood's Lurkers are under siege and the Marines get in the way and actually make Savagewood lose a Lurker. The Vikings are being used for scouting there, and suddenly Doc and Ultralisk are going to join armies here, and they have quite a few tanks combined, about 16 tanks. And it looks like Doc is going to move forward and try to siege up the natural. Savagewood's Vipers are finally done and consumed. He throws up several blinding clouds, and he's going to burrow the Lurkers, as we see a lot of Zerg trying to move forward here and dealing with both the Terrans, as Parasitic Bomb goes off on the Vikings, and Savagewood throws another Parasitic Bomb, which in this scenario acts like a Radiate, killing many of the air units, but suddenly it's just the mech army of Ultralisk that's left. Savagewood is going to try to move forward, and holy shit, there's a lot of tanks. And if we go to the units, despite making so many Vipers, he does not have the energy for Abduct. That's why you make so many, and why you make so many Evo chambers, because if the Terran opponents make Vikings and they make tanks, things are not going to be very good for you. So Savagewood is in this weird position where Lurkers are good versus Terran, but they're really bad versus tanks. So he can't really do a lot with them except tentatively defend. Thankfully for Savagewood, he's getting +2 on those range and melee attacks, as well as +3 carapace and adrenal glands. Notice all this mass consuming going down, as well as the making of more Evo chambers. You want to do Evo chambers because they mate quickly, as we see a base being halted there by Savagewood. Evo chambers make very quickly and they're cheap. And more abducts coming down here from Savagewood, as he's going to break Ultralisk's siege tank encampment there. But with 2 Terran armies, it's going to be tricky for Savagewood alone to push. Lots of Vikings here. They really want to focus the Vipers, which are just a huge issue. And Vikings just completely destroy Vipers. And we see a Parasitic Bomb going down, and Ultralisk is going to do some beleaguered splitting as Roro stems up with his +2 attack, 0 defense Marines. Notice bases are occurring here in the corners for both of the players. Doc did take that corner base. He's having a little bit of trouble as he was harassed over here. And Roro is venturing up. If you get onto this high ground in siege, it can be very powerful. This is what I was talking about, controlling this plateau. And we can see both Terrans are going to swing down. Notice that the Widowmine upgrade is being researched here for Doc. And if we look at the upgrades that are already gotten. Ballistics has been researched, and that is the Liberator range upgrade. And Liberators with range are absolutely fierce, especially if you get the attack upgrade. And Doc cancels Ultralist's third base that Savagewood delayed. If Savagewood didn't delay that, that might have been a PF. And Roro is just going to scream in here and see, oh wow, you forgot to start mining again. And Doc says, oh shit, I forgot to start mining. And loses all the SCVs. Hell, he forgot about him anyway. But that's going to be cleaned up there, as we see triple armory researching mech units. Ultra still has a couple tanks in the middle. These would be much better positioned here and here at the towers. Savagewood is making more Evo chambers so he can keep consuming with his Vipers, and he's also getting some Lurker upgrades, which is great to see. One of them is quicker burrow and one of them is range. And Savagewood is just continuing to get attack upgrades. One of the things you need to remember when you make all these Evo chambers to research is that you want to have your main Evo chambers doing the upgrades, because you're probably going to end up killing the ones you use for research. Let's go back a couple clicks here. So Savagewood has a nice Roach Hydra mix, and if we go to upgrades, he's doing very well relative to the other players. Look, he's about to have +3 Carapace, which is a big deal. Spreading creep down here, trying to take these bases. And the blue army of Doc is moving down here. Remember, Ultralisk is the worst player, and he also was more severely harassed. So after being on this tower, which is also important, Savagewood's going to swing down, do his quick little Lurker burrow, and continue to attack. Now he's going to throw some parasitic bombs out, but whenever an army is retreating and you have Roach Hydra Ling and some Lurkers like this, the play is actually, I'm going to rewind it one more time, just 15 seconds. When the army's running away like this, look at all the money units, the Thors, the tanks, the Liberators. The parasitic bomb is cute, but if you just mass abduct all that stuff as it's running away, you'll steal all the good units in their army. Now, a lot of the Liberators were wounded. It's very tricky to control Vipers, especially versus 2 people when your ally's not really doing much. And with some parasitic bombs and some blinding clouds, a lot of army was killed there. But you can see Doc still retains a lot of his Liberators. Sloppy micro there from my ally. You probably should mix in some Corruptors here, even if you don't want to. Ideally, if you have like a Terran ally, they just make Vikings. And this is another key factor of this map. If you want to win a macro game on this map versus 1 or more Terrans, you're going to have to do Nidus Worm, and you're going to have to make Vipers. And this isn't like brain dead Nidus cheese. This is how the Nidus is supposed to be used. Sneaking in cracklings to your opponent's main as you're keeping them occupied mid-map. We can see the Liberator counts being worn down, and this is what you really want to do. Just make cracklings. Notice they have +2 even though I want a Hydra-based army. Ideally 3/3 cracklings, which we see are on the way now, are what you really want. Thankfully Zergling speed, which is the most important upgrade, has been researched. But a lot of times if you like open Hydras, these Zergling upgrades will suck. You'll have like 1 or 2 Carapace and no melee upgrades. And this is part of what makes this so good, is your opponents have to respect this and come back to defend it. And Ultralisk, who at this point is completely fucked and down to 1 base, as his third was cancelled and he's just been ravaged in the main. This guy's pretty much out of the game, and he doesn't exactly have the brain power to mount a massive comeback. And once you take over a corner of the base, whether it be with Mutalisk harass or with some other form of harass, it's very easy to keep picking at the spot and poking and prodding, as you're going to see more Lings come out here for Savagewood, and they're going to take down the tower and the depots. Notice this base is being pressured, so Doc can't focus completely on defending his main. But this is what I really mean whenever I talk about taking a foothold in someone's base. No tower anymore, no spotter depots. Really the only thing I missed was this turret. And I'm running more stuff in to try to affect Doc, who you've noticed has lost some add-ons on his barracks. Very difficult to deal with. And Roro sort of tentatively has tanks out here. He's more preventing Doc from attacking more than anything. Doc does have a PF out here. It would have been smart to make a couple Lurkers and just siege them out here and slow push it, killing the turrets first. The Nidus is cleaned up, but at this point it won't be hard to sneak another in and keep poking and prodding, especially when you're dealing with mech Terrans and they're smart enough to make Vikings preemptively. It can be very hard to attack head on, as they'll have tanks that'll render pretty much anything on the ground worthless. Then if they have like Thor Viking Liberator, it can be very, very difficult even if you make Broodlords. So Vipers are really the key here, as well as consistently using Nidus late game. And I can't stress how much I mean late game. I don't mean like go for like a random retardo coin flip Nidus bust. I mean be intelligent and get the Nidus in and abuse them in the late game. Notice I snuck in some changelings here. Your opponent's way less likely to see changelings if they come from their own main. And if we just look at my vision here, I clicked all of these changelings in an individual location that I really needed. And Roro's sort of hiding on top of this ramp cliff area, trying to control it, but he doesn't have enough Vikings. And he's pretty much going to lose everything. And we can see Hydra Ling is going to exit the Nidus this time. Hydras at this point aren't really worth a lot to me. I want to put as much pressure on their main as possible, especially because I know the guy who's really still fighting, Doc, really needs his main. And it was the other guy that I killed earlier, the Red Terran. So they're going to go for a Desperation counterattack here. And this is another reason why the map is bad for Zerg. They could have simply sieged everything right here and just had a Viking or whatever and decimated this base. So I pull the drones away, I lose this base. But if we look at their main, I've cleared out a lot of the tech for Doc. So now I'm making a defensive Nidus to help transport the harassment lings over. And the red player Ultralisk is sieging up the base of my Terran ally, and because he's not intelligent enough to move his tanks around and spread them out, one blinding cloud is all it takes. Now if your opponent micros like that and sieges all their shit in one little clump, just throw a couple blinding clouds down and attack it. But if they're intelligent and split correctly, then abduct is what you want to go for. So at this point the Terrans are pretty fucked. This base hasn't been harassed as well as it could have been. It should have just been constantly shelled from up here. And this base has existed for too long. This guy Roro's doing just the bare minimum. But with me crushing the rest of Doc's army, and the Red Terran resorting to mining this base that has been sieged, that's going to be the game. So if we look, I had plenty of Evo chambers. I kept taking more bases. Couple spawns because good players who mech will harass, and I just always tried to have 5 Vipers plus with energy. And near the end of the game my upgrades were exceptional, 333. I really should have gotten more Spire upgrades. I did get the Greater Spire, which was nice, but at this point you might as well queue up both. Oh, it looks like I did. Holy shit, right when I clicked it. Nice. That's crazy. It's crazy how that timed out, because I don't remember doing that, and I certainly didn't set it up. But yeah, on this map, most important things to know, this spot right here, Lurkers are a must-have, but Vipers are really important, and then you make your Evo chambers out at your 3rd and 4th, and you make a lot of them, sub for more.